Hey guys, my name is Annie and welcome to my channel, 10 to Life, where I am bringing you full true crime cases in under 10 minutes. Full cases, start to finish, but only what you want to hear. None of the boring storylines or the empty plots. Just the key facts, the most insane details, and all the unexpected stuff we know happens along the way. I'm coming to you directly from my apartment here in Brooklyn, New York, which if you're watching the video version of this on my YouTube channel, you can see beautiful New York behind me. And if you're listening to the podcast version of this, but you want to check out the video version, feel free to head over to my YouTube channel. If you guys like what you hear, please like, comment, share, review, and don't forget to subscribe by clicking that subscribe button below. If you have any case recommendations, send them my way. I would love to hear them. And don't forget to follow me on social @_Annie Elise. So let's get into the case. Hey guys, welcome back. So before we jump into today's case, I just want to give a little bit of a warning that it's a pretty controversial case. It's actually ongoing right now, which I think is why so many people are so passionate about it out there. And there are a lot of mixed opinions. Because of how controversial it is, at first I wasn't even sure if I was going to be covering this case, but so many of you guys have been requesting it. And as I was doing my research, it is truly a very compelling case and equally important that we speak about it and get awareness out there. Not everyone's going to agree with this video, and to be honest, I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for it. That's if the video is not taken down from the site entirely, but that's okay because, again, it is so important we talk about it. As I was collecting my research, I was reading news articles, watching video conferences, watching interviews, going on Reddit forums, all of this information, and like I said, so many of you reached out, and some of you actually connected me with your friends or people that you know who are directly tied to the location we'll be talking about. So I have some great information there as well where it's coming directly from the source. So let's go ahead and get into it. Vanessa Guillen is a 20-year-old first-class private stationed at a military base in Fort Hood, Texas. On April 22nd this year, it was Vanessa's day off, and she had planned to go hiking with her sister and some friends and really just enjoy the day. But then she was unexpectedly called into work, so she had to cancel her plans. So she cancels her plans and heads to the base to go to the armory where she works with small arms and artillery. Vanessa and her sister are very close. So that day when Vanessa stopped texting her sister back between 11:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m., her sister knew something was wrong. Other people tried contacting Vanessa as well, and the messages were either showing as not delivered or the calls were going directly to voicemail. Vanessa's sister Myra knew something was up, so she says that she reported to command immediately that Vanessa was missing. She jumped in her car and drove 3 hours from Houston to get to the base. Military leaders told the family that they didn't discover Vanessa was missing until 8 p.m. that evening on the 22nd. And really, the only reason they were made aware was because Vanessa's sister here was telling them that she was missing. Now this makes no sense, and it's really where all of this shady stuff comes into play and everything starts to fall apart. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because the military does very strict checks throughout the day to make sure that their soldiers are safe. Particularly at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. are the big checks. So if Vanessa missed any of the checks throughout the day, how is it that she wasn't reported as missing or absent? Well, the supervisor/sergeant responsible for all of the soldiers in the barracks submitted his report that everybody was accounted for during those checks, including the 3 p.m. check-in. However, later when he was pressed, he admits that he didn't see Vanessa, and he characterizes the report as a mistake. I'm sorry, how is that a mistake? Isn't it your job? In the military, where we know it is like classified information, super important, very, very strict, isn't it your job to not only take your soldiers' safety into concern, but to know their whereabouts, and if somebody is missing from a check-in, to raise the flag and say, something's up. Not only that, but Fort Hood officials also could not provide a full accounting of her whereabouts that day, which is extremely disturbing and concerning because, again, not only should there have been multiple checks throughout the day, but how is it that you don't know the whereabouts of one of your soldiers who works in the armory?
Investigators have been slow to give them information and can't really provide a timeline of Vanessa's whereabouts on the day she vanished at Fort Hood.
What Fort Hood officials do say is that Vanessa was last seen in the parking lot earlier that afternoon, but they will not share with the family who the witness was that saw her in the parking lot or who the witness was that saw her go to the parking lot. So what's with the lack of transparency? Why are you being so secretive? Shouldn't the witness be talking to anybody possible to somehow get more information so they could figure out Vanessa's whereabouts? Why aren't you coming forward with who that person is? When they search the armory, the room that Vanessa was working in, they find her car keys, her barracks keys, her ID, and her wallet. but coincidentally, they do not find her phone, or at least Fort Hood officials say they did not find her phone. So all of her belongings were there, all of her personal belongings except her cell phone. That doesn't make sense, which leads me to believe that it's because there was some sort of incriminating evidence on that phone. So either whoever was involved in Vanessa's disappearance took that with them to destroy the evidence, or Fort Hood officials are saying they never recovered the phone because they don't want any of that evidence getting out. But to have all of her personal belongings there except her phone, not buying it. And remember, when everybody was trying to get in touch with Vanessa earlier too, it went straight to voicemail and messages were showing as not delivered. So I'll bet you anything that phone was destroyed. And we're probably going to find that out in the near future. So then when the family asks, okay, well, what about tracing her activity throughout the day through video footage? You guys have to have cameras everywhere, right? Let's track her whereabouts that way. Officials say, we don't have a camera in the armory. Wait a minute. This happened on a military base, a federal building, and you're telling me that you don't have cameras not only in the armory, but you don't have cameras covering every single inch of the base? Seems really suspicious.
Now has a timeline she says is riddled with discrepancies.
There's so many gaps and holes in what we learned today that I am going to demand a congressional investigation for this family. We want to know what happened and who is covering up for who and why are they covering up?
However, what Fort Hood officials do say is that they do believe that there was foul play involved, that Vanessa did not leave of her own free will, and that they're taking into account all leads and they're really investigating pretty thoroughly. If that's true, why aren't you sharing all of the details that you have, and why aren't you being more transparent with the family with the information that you've received? Now, what makes this case even more disturbing is that prior to Vanessa's disappearance, she confided in her mom, her sister, and some close friends about a sergeant who was sexually harassing her at the base. Not only sexually harassing her, but so bad where he was following her on her runs, and where he one time showed up in her shower while she was naked. She said she felt very unsafe at Fort Hood. However, she never disclosed that person's name to her family or friends. And when they suggested that she file a formal complaint, Vanessa said she wasn't going to because she was scared it was going to get her in trouble, or that it would just be brushed aside so it wouldn't matter. And her family and friends say they're unsure if Vanessa ever actually ended up making a formal complaint. Which, even if she did, would we know about it? Would that be something that the Fort Hood officials would share with us when they're being so secretive about everything else? Probably not. And further, did she, on that day, on April 22nd, decide that was the day she was going to file the complaint, and that's why she mysteriously disappeared? We don't know if she filed that. We don't know if she had plans to file that. And chances are we're not going to ever know if she did. Finally, last week, months later after this happened, Fort Hood officials announced that they're going to be launching an investigation into the sexual harassment claims. However, they say the reason they didn't do so sooner is because they didn't consider it to be criminal. Are you kidding me? It just goes to show how much they care about their soldiers and Vanessa, which also shows Vanessa was completely right when she expressed concern that if she did file that complaint, it was just going to get brushed aside and not taken seriously. Because even now, when she's missing, they're still not taking it seriously. They said so far the investigation hasn't provided any viable leads, and that they were also investigating a verbal complaint that Vanessa had made about harassment, but they weren't able to corroborate the story. Okay, shocker, of course not, because if you're not even being forthcoming with who saw her last, of course you're not going to say that anything came out of this investigation or that you're finding any solid evidence. I mean, this entire thing is just ridiculous, and the level of secrecy is truly unnerving. It's gotten so bad that while the FBI has been involved in this investigation, Vanessa's family is now requesting that they take over the entire investigation because of how little work and how little information the Army is providing. And the Army says they're the lead investigative agency because it happened in their jurisdiction, almost stonewalling anybody else from coming in and taking over the investigation. Why? If you have nothing to hide and if you truly are trying to help find Vanessa, then why wouldn't you allow anybody to come and help? Why are you being so territorial saying it's your jurisdiction and you're going to take the lead? Probably because you're trying to hide something and make sure certain details don't come out. The family also has requested that U.S. Senator Ted Cruz open up a congressional investigation into her disappearance. They are just seeking any help they can get to the bottom of this and get past these military a-holes who aren't giving information. So through all of my research, I uncovered that this is not an isolated incident. It's not just a one-off incident that appears to be shady. This is just one incident in a long string of shady shit that has happened at Fort Hood, which because of all of these other things that have happened in the past, it just makes it all the more clear that something is not right with Vanessa's case and that something shady is going on. Dakota Stump went missing from Fort Hood in October 2016. Investigators followed several false leads until ultimately 3 weeks later they discover his body underneath his car car in a wooded area on base. And officials say he died in what appeared to be a single car crash. I don't know. Question mark on that. On August 19th, 2019, not even a year ago, Greg Morales went missing, and he was last seen driving off post. But here's the thing, he was supposed to be discharged just a couple of days later. And his mom and wife say he would never have just vanished or disappeared voluntarily, given that he was supposed to be completely discharged in just a few days from then. And last week, on June 26th, his remains were found buried in a field. And Greg's mom doesn't feel like the investigation was ever taken seriously or that they worked very hard on it. And here's why. After 24 hours of a soldier failing to report for duty, they are technically considered AWOL, which I'm sure you've heard that term before. Even though commanders are required to look into these individual cases and search for these missing soldiers once they go AWOL, many times the search isn't really actually done in a big serious way because of the stigma that the label AWOL carries. So this leads to a delay in the search or a delay in the entire investigation, not a thorough search, not paying attention to every detail, and essentially lost time. Then, after 30 days, the Army actually drops the missing soldier from their roster and marks them as a deserter. So was he even really looked for, or was he just going formally through the motions of being AWOL, then a deserter, and we're not really looking for him, he just kind of took off, even though he was set to be discharged just a few days later? Because of this stupid formality, another thing that feels very unjust is that because Greg was listed technically as a deserter, his family is now responsible for the entire cost of his funeral. Greg won't receive a proper military burial or be honored as a soldier. The Army has even said that they suspect foul play was involved, so clearly they know it's more than just him going AWOL. I mean, he's not burying himself in a field alone. Give me a break. So why continue to have him classified as that and strip him of the benefits and the honor of being a soldier, when he really was a soldier until days before he was going to be discharged? And now you're stripping him of that? And unrelated to Greg's case, but fully related to the shady dealings at Fort Hood. On March 13th, 14 people were arrested in a 2-day sex trafficking, prostitution, and pimp sting that the local police had set up. And out of those 14 people, 6 of them were Fort Hood soldiers. As I mentioned earlier, I spoke with quite a few people who have direct ties to either the military base at Fort Hood or somebody closely involved in that. And I spoke with somebody directly who was stationed there for 5 years, and he said that there were over 10 suicides in less than a year, and that the barracks were covered in drugs. He said there were massive amounts of narcotics floating around, some people using, a lot of people selling, and just complete shady dealings. And we know that that town has kind of a track record for being a little dangerous, a little covered with narcotics, specifically heroin and meth, but he said even on base, this stuff was bleeding throughout. A pharmacist actually also reached out to me and said he was constantly filling fake prescriptions written by doctors, that it was for all of these crazy insane pills nonstop, and he knew something was going on here, so he called the police, contacted them to say, look, this doctor, a few different doctors actually, are writing fake prescriptions. I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm filling these nonstop. It's for back pain. It's for this. It's for that. Ongoing prescriptions that clearly are not necessary. Something's up. And the police tell him to stay out of it, which he doesn't. And he actually contacts State Board and makes an official statement with them. And there was actually going to be a raid on one of these doctors' offices specifically. And he says that the military came in, blocked the streets so that the feds couldn't come in, while the doctor and his employees in the office cleaned up all of the records. So are the local police and the military helping each other out? Are they covering up crimes? Is there some sort of financial gain and financial benefit that is going on with all of these drugs that are circulating? What is going on? And finally, a woman who I spoke with that prefers to remain anonymous says she has a friend who is currently stationed at Fort Hood, and that she has told her something is happening at this base and people, especially women, are too scared to talk about it. And that the military has a reputation for sweeping sexual abuse and sexual assault claims under the rug and really protecting their own, which we've already kind of seen proven in Vanessa's case when they straight up said that they didn't consider it to be criminal, which is why they didn't investigate it sooner, even after she was missing.
Ian's story has caught national attention, resonating with women who say they have also been sexually harassed in the military.
So regardless of what the truth behind the curtain is, where is Vanessa? Why isn't the military sharing more information? Why aren't they being more forthcoming? Why is there such a lack of transparency to give information to help find Vanessa? Why is the family being forced to resort to reaching out to Congress, to the FBI directly, to all of these other channels, when shouldn't the military be invested in protecting their soldiers and figuring out what's going on and getting to the bottom of it, not hiding or covering things up? But apparently there is such a level of corruption happening and so much cover-up happening that they can't get answers. They're completely stonewalled. So what is the military covering up? And if you're watching this video and you're stationed at Fort Hood, or you know somebody who's stationed there, it's time to speak up and start sharing what you know. The time is over for covering for your bros. This is a young woman's life and her family's life. It's time to come forward, it's time to share information, and it's time to get to the bottom of this. And hopefully get justice for Vanessa and bring some peace to her family, regardless whatever that outcome is, which hopefully praying that it is her safe return home. Like I said, this video I'm sure is gonna get a lot of hate, and again, that's all right, I don't care. We need to be spreading awareness about this. We need to get Vanessa's story out, because the more we talk about it and the more it's shared, the more likely it is that information will begin to trickle out and some sort of resolution will be found. I'll keep you guys updated as soon as I know more. Thank you for listening to this case with me, and to Vanessa's family, you are in my prayers, you are in all of our prayers, and we are hoping for Vanessa's safe return. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.